Hello and welcome to Complexity Limits Guide for the Mythic Ny'alotha encounter, written and produced by Crzypck in coordination with Complexity Limit, brought to you by GameStop. For Ny'alotha's encounter on Mythic, you're going to be working through the same phases you're already familiar with from Heroic. However, Heroic's Phase 1 doesn't exist in the Mythic encounter. So, Mythix Phase 1 is what you know as Heroic's Phase 2. Mythix Phase 2 is what you know as Heroic's Phase 3. At a set time within Mythix Phase 2, you'll need to enter a gateway and complete the Mythic only phase, then you'll return for Phase 3 and kill the boss. Mythix Phase 3 is an exact repeat of Mythix Phase 2. We recommend going in with 2 tanks, 4 healers, and 14 DPS. We also strongly recommend that you have at least 10 total players in your raid with immunities. Before we get into the phases, there's 2 important encounter-wide changes. First, on Mythic, Paranoia is applied to every player in the physical realm each time it's cast, except for the tanks. This makes pre-spreading before the cast completes extremely important, as every point of sanity in your raid matters. It's always better to take an extra tick of damage from the Paranoia from being away from your partner than it is to take sanity loss. Second, is how the extra action button for the Heart of Azeroth necklace works. On Mythic, each player may only click their button a single time during the encounter. Additionally, the sanity restoration effect is now only 25 sanity over 4 seconds, but this is applied to everybody within a 5-yard circle. In other words, the necklace clicks need to be coordinated with specific people clicking at specific times, so everybody in the raid gets their sanity restored. You can't just stand off on your own clicking your necklace. Okay, so into the fight. Like we said before, Mythic's Phase 1 is the same as Heroic's Phase 2, just with drastically higher numerical tuning, which will cause a bit difference in priorities. First and foremost, the damage intake on your raid is nutty, to the tune of well over 600,000 damage taken per second across your entire raid for the duration of Phase 1. The tanks in particular will take an extremely high amount of damage from the bashers, so healers need to make sure the tanks are getting the attention they need. As far as actually killing tentacles goes, bashers are number 1 priority, followed by the spikes and corruptors. Don't let any of the corruptors get cast off, and do not forget about the spike tentacles. The damage they do actually matters a lot, and if you leave 1 or 2 up accidentally, it can very easily kill people. Like in Heroic, you'll need set groups of people for the mind gates. The first mind gate is at about a minute, the second is at about 4 minutes. Each group should be 8 people, 1 tank, 2 healers, and 5 DPS. Fire mages are crazy strong in the Psychist realm, and if you have 2 or more fire mages, you'll want to make sure to split them up between the 2 groups so each group has at least 1 fire mage. You want to kill the synapses in a set pattern, and DPS should pop all of their cooldowns and burn Psychist when he's at 8 stacks. We will show animations on the screen for both patterns, and you can also find the illustrations in the written guide at complexity.gg/limit guides. For the first Psychist group, they'll need to dodge the red swirlies on the ground, and the second Psychist group will need to deal with Ashara slapping you when you move. This actually really freaking hurts on Mythic, so that second Psychist group needs to minimize movement as much as possible. To help minimize the damage you take from moving, use a Warlock gateway from where you land entering the phase to get over to the first synapse that you'll kill, and then follow the path around the room. For both Psychist phases, DPS priority is entirely on the synapses until 8 stacks. If you're too slow killing the synapses, you won't kill Psychist quickly enough to avoid an extra set of tentacle adds upstairs in the physical realm. You have about a minute and 20 seconds from the time you enter the mind gate until you need Psychist dead to make sure you skip that extra set of tentacles. Couple of extra things for you to know about Phase 1. First, when a synapse or a corruptor tentacle dies, 2 little psychophage adds will spawn in the opposite realm. They have an AoE cast that can be interrupted, and they'll also explode in an AoE area when they die. Don't get hit by either. It hurts, and it drains sanity. Next, after each Psychist phase ends, you'll get 30 seconds to burn the boss. During this time, after all remaining psychophage adds are dead, the raid should group up at a set point and pop 2 of your Azeroth necklaces to bring everyone back to full sanity. After the first burn, your goal is to get the boss below 89% health, and after the second burn, your goal is to have the boss below 78% health. Next, for the Mind Grasp, you'll need to clear a wider area of the neuron goop, as it'll overlap with your paranoia. Make sure to give yourself enough space to not overlap paranoias and also not get dragged through the goop. Warlocks can use Banish on these, which will make them not drop their goop at all. You can also use other CCs for this, but Warlock Banish is the most reliable. Important for you to know, the goop itself ticks for 320k damage per second, and the first tick occurs instantly when you touch it. Make damn sure you don't get dragged through it, because it's very possible the moment you touch it you just fall over dead. Lastly, you'll want to pop your Bloodlust at 2 minutes and 5 seconds into the fight. This is a well over 10-minute long fight, and you will have 2 lusts. Using this specific timing at 2:05 will line up with both a Phase 1 Ny'alotha burn and your execute during Phase 3. After the second post-Psychus burn ends, you'll then move into Phase 2. There's a couple differences here for you to note. First off, the Thought Harvesters. These guys will spawn in groups of 2 now instead of 1 at a time, and their cast will now drain significantly more sanity and deal a boatload more damage. This is where having 10 players with immunities comes in. You can have a group of 5 people at a time use an immunity and soak the Harvest Thoughts cast, which will prevent that group of people from taking damage and the sanity drain aspect of it too. This is important because preserving as much sanity across your raid as possible is vital to get you through this fight. In addition to the Thought Harvester changes, Evoke Anguish Puddles can no longer be dropped on top of each other here on Mythic, as there's about a 4-yard radius AoE explosion around each player when the puddle drops. If you stack up, you'll just blow up your raid and die. Last important thing here before we get into it, the Mythic only phases gateway opens up 2 minutes and 44 seconds after the Convergence cast ends. Okay, so within Phase 2, the fight is entirely scripted based on timings, relative to when Convergence ends. You'll start with a set of Thought Harvesters. This first group's cast should be soaked by everybody in the raid. After the cast completes, you'll move into an Evoke Anguish. You'll want to carefully position these near the entrance of the room. After the puddles drop, everyone should move to melee range, and you should pop 2 Heart of Azeroth buttons to restore everybody's sanity back to full. This will be followed by lasers spinning clockwise, and then another Evoke Anguish. This set of puddles for Evoke Anguish should be dropped directly in front of the first puddles, with the overflow people on the right hand side as well. Then everyone should move over to the right. All Evoke Anguishes after this one should be dropped as close to the existing line of puddles as possible. Next up after that Evoke Anguish is a Paranoia going into a Mind Grasp. Make sure to clear sufficient area of neurons, since everybody in the raid except the tanks is going to be affected by this Paranoia, which will require you to spread out a little bit more during the Mind Grasp. After Mind Grasp ends, you'll have another Evoke Anguish, so be sure to spread out and drop that near the old pools. After that's another set of Thought Harvesters. For this set, you'll want 5 players to immune the Harvest Thoughts cast. Immediately following the cast completing will be the next Evoke Anguish, followed by counterclockwise lasers. Then, followed by the third set of Thought Harvesters. While you're fighting this third set, you'll have a Paranoia cast go out. So you'll want this third set of Thought Harvesters to have their cast also soaked by people with immunities. After that cast ends, you'll get another set of lasers, this time spinning clockwise, then a bit of downtime to finish off the ads and burn the boss. While you're burning the boss here during this downtime, you should slowly move to the northern end of the room, as that's where the gateway spawns. You want a Warlock to set up a demonic gateway from melee range over to the Secret Phase gateway, and keep nuking the boss until your boss mod says he's about to start casting Eternal Torment. At that point, at the last possible moment, you'll want to use the Warlock's demonic gateway and take that to the Secret Phase gateway, click the Secret Phase gateway, and enter the Chamber of the Heart. Within the chamber, you'll fight the Void Spawn Annihilator ad, and then, after you kill it, you return to Ny'alotha. The ad itself has its own set of abilities that you'll need to worry about. First, dodge the purple swirlies on the ground when they appear. They'll kill you. Players affected by Annihilate, denoted by purple circles around you, need to move away from the group. The last ability from the ad is Event Horizon, which puts an absorb effect on the tank. Simply tank swap here, and healers should not really focus on healing off the old absorb shield. In addition to all of this, there's an environmental mechanic, the Countermeasure Protocols. These are glowing tight and yellow orbs that'll spawn around the room in set locations. After a period of time, they'll explode, dealing lethal damage to anybody within a targeting circle around them, and drop-off damage to everybody else. You will most likely not be able to survive 2 of these exploding at the same time. Fortunately, you can disarm them, which will make them despawn, by clicking on them, which will use your Heart of Azeroth neck. Unfortunately, after a player does this, their extra action button disappears, and they cannot use their button to restore players' sanity. For each set of these countermeasures, you'll want to have pre-assigned people who are going to click the orbs. For Protocol Set 1, you'll disarm 2 and let the furthest one away explode. For Set 2, disarm all 3 protocols, as they'll be in the middle of the room, and even one explosion there will likely kill you. For Set 3, disarm 2 of them. For set number 4, disarm 3 of them. By this time, you should have the ad just about dead. Once it dies, click the gateway to return to Ny'alotha. When you re-emerge from the gateway, you'll enter Phase 3. You'll want to run counterclockwise to the southern end of the room, near the edge of the puddles on the ground. From here on out, this is an exact repeat of Phase 2, with the exact same ability sequence. You'll handle everything like you did in Phase 2, except this time, after every Evoke Anguish, you'll move clockwise. For the Thought Harvesters, immune the casts for sets 1 and 2. Use Bloodlust as the third set of Harvesters spawns, and have your tanks move them towards the back of the room. Ignore their cast and let it go off unsoaked. This will drain everybody's sanity to 0, and give the raid a 20-second damage buff. Kill the boss. If you don't kill the boss by the time this 20 seconds ends, the whole raid gets mind controlled and you wipe. During this window, you'll get lasers, and you'll want to shift as far left as you can to try to beat them sideways. You'll also have paranoia during this, so it's important that you don't get stuck on opposite sides of the laser with someone you're connected with. Last up, we have a couple of healer tips before we finish, courtesy of Maybe Cakes. In Phase 1, use healer cooldowns as necessary, which will likely be during the Eternal Torments, as that bit of extra damage really freaking hurts. In Phases 2 and 3, you'll want to make sure you have a raid cooldown up for every Evoke Anguish to keep the group stable. You can also add in things like Rallying Cry if you have warriors. During the Harvest Thoughts cast that the raid soaks, the ranged standing healers, like Resto Shamans, can just stand outside of the group, not soak, and pump their heals into the soaking group instead. This will also let those healers pre-position for the Evoke Anguish, letting them be stationary for a little bit longer and have a little bit more total healing throughput. The melee standing healers, like especially Holy Pallies and Mistweaver Monks, should get priority in where they position themselves for Evoke Anguish. The melee DPS should move away from the boss and make sure the healers, especially the Holy Pallies, have somewhere to stand within melee range of the boss. Lastly, during the Mythic only gateway phase, don't worry too much about healing off the tank's absorb shield. It's not worth wasting the extra mana on. And that's the fight. Just as a note, in the written version of our guide, we have a complete timeline for all of Phase 2, the Mythic Secret Phase, and Phase 3 written down to the second. That's in our written guide at complexity.gg/limit guides. So if you think that'll be helpful, please make sure to visit that. Best of luck to you while you progress on this boss. Just keep in mind, it is an end boss, and it's the end boss for the expansion, so you can expect it to take probably between 200 and 300 pulls. Hang in there, enjoy your progression, go and overcome this with your guild and your friends, and get yourself your cutting edge achievement to cap off your expansion. Thanks so much for taking this journey with us. Thank you for following us through this raid and our first time making these videos, and we can't wait to be back with you all in Shadowlands.